Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 269 of the Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is From No to Success, an interview with Leanne Pearson. My name is Richard Johannesson, and I was blessed to work with my special co-host and friend, Maria Mooney, on this podcast. Leanne Pearson is a country rock singer-songwriter from Nashville, Tennessee, and Winnipeg, Canada. She has written and produced several songs, including Miles Away, Little Man, and the TikTok famous Catterday. Ms. Pearson's professional and personal life plans were more times than not rejected by her family, friends, and teachers. She was told she could not be a professional singer-songwriter, and she was told she was not sick during her lengthy diagnostic journey. No was a constant theme in Ms. Pearson's early life. Despite all the naysayers, she is a highly regarded singer-songwriter. She found a naturopathic doctor that finally tied together her random symptoms and diagnosed her with Lyme disease. And she is now healthy enough to be a new mom. Without further ado, we are excited to introduce country rock sensation, Leanne Pearson. Hello, Leanne Pearson, and welcome to the Tick Bootcamp podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We are really excited, and I'm more excited than usual because one of my favorite people is co-hosting with me today, one of our early guests and one of the members of the Tick Bootcamp family, and now we're making her an official member of the family, not just because she was a guest, but now she is a co-host. So Maria, please say hi to the folks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Matt and Rich. You're like a second family to me by now. And it's always so wonderful to be asked to be on here. It's an absolute honor. Happy to be here.
Well, don't be too nice, Maria, because I may make you a regular. I'm already thinking about firing Matt, and now that I have one of my favorite people posting with me, it will make my week much more enjoyable.
I'm sure, and a fumble slip, and you'll be like, she's out. Because I'm from the East Coast too.
So, Leanne, talk to us about where you're currently living, because I know you're married to an American. You were living in the U.S. for a while. You're now back in Canada. So talk to us about where you are currently living.
Well, currently I am in the U.S. again. I'm in Indiana visiting my husband's family. And so we're kind of just back and forth between Canada and the U.S. at the moment.
And of course, we always love our Canadian guests, in part because they're just like the nicest North Americans, and in part because they say about. So I always know who's from Canada because we say about very differently. Maria and I, of course, will be speaking very differently.
Mm-hmm.
So Leanne, so talk to us about what it was like growing up in Canada.
I loved growing up in Canada. I loved the snow, and I loved looking outside and seeing blue skies and snow and beautiful summers, and everybody's just, like you said, just nice, and Canada's just a great place to be.
So Canada, at least from the standpoint of your southern neighbors, not only do we think you're the nice North Americans because we're all cranky down here, but we also think of Canada as a sort of, really beautiful, outdoorsy kind of culture. Is that what your childhood was like?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's no temperature that can stop us from doing anything. It's never too hot and it's never too cold. And even on the coldest days this past winter, people were out walking their dogs, and they put their snowsuits on and they went out tobogganing or for walks. And it didn't matter if your eyelashes froze and your nostril hairs froze to the side of your nose, you were outside.
So it's really interesting that Canadians are so tough and that they're willing to fight through the cold and spend their time outdoors. But, Canadians also have risks when they're outdoorsy during the warm weather, right? So talk to us about what you knew about ticks and tick diseases when you're growing up as an outdoorsy gal in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that most people talked about mosquitoes. Especially where I'm from, mosquitoes are just bad. So growing up, it was always, oh, you don't want West Nile, and better put your bug spray on and cover up when you go up by the bonfire in the summer. And so there was this, oh, don't have standing water in your yard. Got to flip everything upside down after it rains, because it was always mosquitoes was what everyone talked about. And if you got bit by a mosquito, you'd have that anxiety of, oh, no, they took my blood. And so the only reason we really knew about ticks growing up was because of pets. If you had pets, you knew about ticks because you worry about your dog and you check your dog, and then cats too. At first it was really, you only thought a dog could get it, and then you realized cats could too. But so we were always checking our dog for ticks. And and finding them. Honestly, we found them all the time in the summer. We grew up outside of the city in the summer times, and we were picking them off with the like eyebrow pluckers, and you're picking it off and you're burning it, and that's we knew about ticks because of dogs.
Okay, so, and this is of course interesting, right? So you folks, at least in the part of Canada where you were growing up, were concerned about vectors. You were concerned about what would happen if a mosquito would bite you and what a mosquito would spit into you and ultimately could cause you to get sick. West Nile being one of the diseases that you're aware of. You were tick aware because your pets would have ticks, but there was no crossover between your concern about what a vector could spit into you from a tick bite.
100%. I don't even think people really understood that how you got West Nile, and when a mosquito bit you, that they weren't just sucking blood, which was the myth, that they were actually like you could get something from them. I don't think people understood that you got West Nile, they're like you said, it's a vector, right? So I don't think people understood that they're taking something and putting something in.
Okay, so let's pause there for a second. So talk about what the educational system was like in Canada. We, as your southern neighbors, generally admire the Canadian educational system. Was it a good system, or we just think everything's good about Canada because we don't live there?
I think the knowledge of other parts of the world exist more in Canada than elsewhere, I think, because in the Canadian educational system, we had to learn the US presidents, and we're like, why do we need to know this? And we learned the map of the US, and gosh, do I remember it? No, I don't. When I married my husband, I was like, I am determined. And I took all these like 1-minute tests on the internet so that I could try to name every single state in 1 minute. And I got it one day, but then the memory things, and it's gone. So that's on my to-do list, is I want to go back and refresh all that. But yeah, we learned about other parts of the world, and it was part of, social studies and history class and everything. And then when I started coming to the US frequently and speaking to people, I just thought that was the educational system everywhere, that you learned about other parts of the world. And it just wasn't that way. And I think that's why Canadians are so nice and well-rounded. And, it's not to say other people around the world aren't at all, but we were forced to learn about a wide variety of things.
Let's talk about what you learned about your own country and your own environment, right? Because what I really want to focus on is when you were taking your science classes, when you were taking your health classes, you were apparently learning about vectors, you were learning about mosquitoes, but it sounds like you really didn't learn a whole lot about that to keep you safe. And you certainly didn't learn anything about ticks despite having this diverse educational opportunity available to you.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, is that we were, in school and on the news and everything, we're always learning about such a wide variety of things that I forget now, right? That's the point, is I don't remember the US presidents, and I don't remember the Canadian prime ministers. I don't remember any of that. Why is there not educational systems in place that are teaching us things we need to know and that matter, and things we will actually remember? Even in math class, I don't remember anything from math class. Why aren't there classes about world things like ticks and mosquitoes and, Alzheimer's and just anything really, cancer? Why aren't we being taught in school things that could potentially affect us or our families growing up?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about when you were a young person in Canada. What was your vision for yourself? You're now a singer-songwriter and you're one of some note, right? I mean, I actually listened to a lot of your work on Spotify recently, and you're an impressive singer-songwriter. Was that something you always thought you were going to do, or is this something that came to you later?
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. I always knew that I wanted to be a singer. And so growing up in school, you're always asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd say singer. And everyone else is like doctor, lawyer, pilot. And I'm like, singer. And they're like, you're weird. So I got called weird a lot growing up because I was the weird one writing songs and singing in my bedroom. And
the artsy one, right?
In Canada, they call each other weird the way we do in New York?
Yes, I was the weird one. And I grew up being called weird all the time. And it was just because I was a creative person and I expressed myself differently than other people, and I was just weird.
So talk to us about how you ultimately developed this dream of becoming what is now a professional and a noted singer-songwriter.
Yeah, I mean, I discovered instruments and I discovered songwriting. The songs were terrible, but I discovered songwriting. I went into the studio and I just ultimately fell in love with it. And so I think my son's crying. Can you hear him?
We can't hear him, but he's certainly
You can
welcome
hear
to
him?
join us.
He's like, Mom, Mom. Well, he can't say mom yet, but I'm working on that being his first word. So,
Yes, so
but my
fingers
husband wants it to be dad.
of
So
course.
we'll see.
I have to admit, I only had one child say dad first. 3 of the 4 said mom first, but
Oh,
I did
wow.
say dad. So I will have to tell you that I don't have favorites except for the one that said dad first.
Dad, yeah, of
Perfect.
course.
That's great. I will keep working on him saying mom first then. So what was the question again?
So the question was, just share with us what the path was from,
Yes.
this young gal in Canada who's considered the weird kid, who has this artistic way of presenting herself, to ultimately becoming a successful singer-songwriter whose work is on Spotify and many other places.
Yeah, I mean, persistence. I think it's persistence and determination and just not taking no for an answer. And growing up, I just heard the word no a lot. I would try out for Canadian Idol, which is the same as American Idol, but for Canadians, and I would hear no. And I would show up and I would, do my hair when I was younger and I would pick my favorite outfit and pick my song and practice it and I'd show up and they'd go, no. And I'd write a song and I'd show it to someone and they'd go, no. And I just heard no a lot, that I think instead of it kicking me in the butt and making me feel sad, I think it kicked me in the butt and gave me more inspiration to want to do better and be better and pursue things further.
So now, as you were hearing no, and we need to build out a little bit your Lyme story here. We are a Lyme disease podcast. As you were hearing no, as you were pursuing your dreams and as you were pursuing your artistic interests, you also had, I guess, a part of your body saying no as well because you weren't feeling well. So talk to us about when your symptoms first began to develop and how is that interfering with your artistic pursuits?
I mean, I was in the children's hospital when I was really, really young. That's something most people don't know because I don't really talk about it, but I had septic hip, which is a bacterial infection that I could have died from if it wasn't caught. And it was. So I had a emergency surgery. They kind of scraped the infection out. I got a big scar on my hip now. And I spent a lot of time in the children's hospital when I was younger on IV and heavy, heavy amounts of antibiotics when I was younger. And so I basically was a bubble child. For how many years of my life where my parents weren't allowed to, there was no stress in the house. I could do something and I wasn't allowed to get yelled at. I couldn't be disciplined, had to keep the stress level down. I was just a bubble child. And so growing up, because of being on such heavy antibiotics, I think it killed my immune system at such a young age. So I was always sick. I had everything. I've had everything. And I would always go to my parents and say, my ear hurts, or my head hurts, or my throat hurts, or my toe hurts. And so people just stopped believing me. But anytime that I complained of something, I was in fact sick. And so I think that, I love my parents to death, but I think that it took me complaining about, one time they'd take me. And then eventually I had to complain 2 times and they'd take me to the doctor. And then it was 3 times. And so that the duration of me being sick just kept getting longer and longer until people would actually listen to me. And so, fast forward till I'm older and I can now make my own, doctor's appointment and drive myself to the doctor. And I was at the doctor's office all the time and I was always sick. And it was always some kind of bacterial infection that involved antibiotics. So I now am resistant to amoxicillin, which is one of the number one antibiotics. It does nothing for me. And there's a few that are now slightly more ineffective than they used to be for me as well. So I've had so many antibiotics that my immune system just kind of maybe isn't there, or what the reasoning is, I don't know. But I've just spent my whole life being sick. And you go back to the hearing no, I heard that a lot, even with my health, was I have an ear infection. No, you're fine. I have a sore throat. There's pus all over my throat. I can see it. no, you're fine. So I just heard that growing up so much that once I got really, really sick, I just kept saying in my own head, no, you're fine. No, you're fine. And I'd go to a doctor and I'd say, this is what's wrong with me. And they'd say, no, you're fine. And so eventually, doctors started taking blood work and basically having a baseline and following all this inflammation in my body and, diagnosing me with all these different things. And I'm thinking in my head, like, there's just no way one person has all these things. There's no way one person needs to see this many specialists. There's no way. And I thought in my head, everything's got to be connected, but how? Right? And so then introduces Lyme disease, and you realize, wow, it really is all connected.
Okay, so now I have a whole lot to unpack. I'm very excited. So let's give folks a timeline here. You said that you were sickly from a very young age, where you had your time in the children's hospital, and then you ultimately were diagnosed with Lyme disease. So what is that window of time between when you first had your time in the children's hospital to the time when you were finally diagnosed with Lyme disease?
25 years, 20 years. It was a long, long time. And did I have Lyme disease when I was really young? We'll just never know, right?
Well,
I was on so many antibiotics all the time. So if I did have it, those antibiotics would theoretically beat down that bacteria and that infection, and then it would grow again and manifest again. And then it would, who knows, right? You don't know what a young body is going through.
Well, let's talk about it, right? So do you ever remember being bitten by a tick?
I have had lots of weird insects on me growing up. I was an outdoor child, and I had ticks, and I had everything on me because I just was always outside.
Right. So, and I'm not sure that everything is such a straight line, right? Because part of what we talk with guests about is the possibility that they contracted Lyme congenitally, that their mom had Lyme disease and they had Lyme disease their entire life. Now, you sound like you may be one of those candidates because you were sickly for your entire life, that you may have been dealing with Lyme disease your entire life. And because of that, although it manifested in different ways, it was beating down your immune system, and it would present as the problem with your hip. It would present as a problem with your throat. It would present because your immune system was being suppressed by the Lyme disease, right? That's one way of looking at this. Another way of looking at it is that you had a compromised immune system. It could be genetically, it could be because you had other illnesses, and then you got bitten by a tick, and the bacteria took off because your immune system didn't have the ability to protect against it. And I guess it doesn't really matter whether it's the chicken or the egg, but it took a long time for you to be diagnosed. And that diagnostic journey was made longer in part because your family was telling you to suck it up. You had some questions in your own head, and it wasn't until you ultimately became independent and you started taking responsibility for your own care that you were finally able to get a diagnosis.
That's exactly it. I mean, as a young girl, and you tell people you don't feel well, and every time you go to the doctor, they go, yeah, she's got strep throat again. Yeah, she's got tonsillitis again. And it seemed to always be my throat that was at a certain, between, I don't know, let's say 10 and the time I had a tonsillectomy, so I had my tonsils removed. From 10 to about whenever age I was, 20 something, it was always my throat because I was using it to sing all the time, right? So not only am I singing with it, but I'm talking with it. So it's the same as if I just do a bicep curl on just my right arm all the time, my arm's going to be sore, right? So it's the same thing. So all of that just went to my throat. And then eventually those tonsils were harboring infection, and the infection never actually went away. So it kept reinfecting itself. Eventually they were so swollen, I had issues. So this is, kind of fast forwarding on into my life with Lyme disease, but I eventually, an ENT got introduced into my life, and we removed my tonsils and no more throat infection. So what was harboring that infection that we knew of was removed. And so I just, don't get sore throats often anymore. I don't get any of those infections, but she started doing checkups on me. And actually, because of having COVID while pregnant recently, and shingles and laryngitis and all this stuff within the last, since in December, I am now due in 2 to 3 weeks to have another checkup on my vocal cords, my nose, my eyes, all that kind of stuff to make sure everything's okay as a result of those infections. And so she caught that one of my vocal cords was paralyzed. And so I was having laryngitis a lot and a raspy voice, which sometimes you can still kind of hear when I'm talking. And so she did this test on me and said, yeah, I mean, I think it was my left one. She said, yeah, it's paralyzed. It's not moving. Just your right one is working. So she put me on vocal rest for a while. I had to cancel a bunch of shows. And then you kind of hear a little bit about Shania Twain's story, right? Same thing, as most people who are listening right now are probably aware of her situation. She lost her voice. And so I essentially lost my voice, but half of my voice. And so I couldn't sing, I couldn't talk, I couldn't do any of those things to try to rest that voice. Ultimately, resting it caused that vocal cord to unparalyze itself. Now I have a raspy voice again. Is it paralyzed again? I don't know. Is that Lyme disease? I don't know, right?
So talk to us about the Lyme disease diagnosis, and what other diagnosis did you have before you had Lyme disease?
Everything. You name it, I've had absolutely everything. And it's almost like the girl who cried wolf, except everything I'm crying is real. So you kind of go down this list and you just kind of have to chuckle because you're like, wow, yeah, you're sick again. So even my friends too, not only did I hear no in my health journey and my music career, but I had to say no a lot. Hey, we're going out tonight. You want to come? No, I'm not feeling well. And I just had to say no a lot. And I learned to just listen to my own body and trust my own instincts of I can't do this right now because I don't feel well. Or I'm going to go out with my friends, but I'm going to be home by 11 so I can sleep well. So I had to make all these decisions and knowing I wasn't well, but not knowing what it was. So eventually I got in touch with a naturopath. They're ultimately who diagnosed me, but they diagnosed me because that's their world, right? That's their world. And so I went to all these different doctors and they would just push me here. Let's send you to a neurologist because you have migraines. Let's send you to a dermatologist because you have rashes. Let's send you here to this. And I just got thrown around to so many different doctors till eventually my cell phone is just doctor this, doctor that, doctor that, doctor. You just type in D on my phone and I'm telling you, there's a million doctors. You need one? I got one for you.
She's got the reference.
I got them all.
So Leanne, so you were, the proverbial elephant that had a different doctor blindfolded touching a different part of the elephant, and no one was looking at the entire elephant until, and please excuse the metaphor, it's just a metaphor, but no one looked at the entire elephant until you went to a naturopathic doctor. And when you went to a naturopath, that doctor tied all of these different symptoms together that all the specialists were looking at with, through the prism of their specialty, and told you, hey, I think there's something that all of these things have in common.
100%. And I would go to a specialist and I would try to tell them the bigger picture, whether it related to their specialty or not. I wanted them to know the big picture. So even, I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but even having the COVID and everything while pregnant, and now I've got some nerve issues in my hands. I went to, this doctor 2 months ago about a nerve issue in my hand, and I told him the whole story of everything. And I said, you're not going to believe me, but blank. And I briefly explained everything. And I said, I don't know if it's related or not, but this is my whole story. So eventually I just started going to doctors with a cover letter. And the cover letter had dates and it had blood results and it had everything on this cover letter. And I would walk in and I would hand it to them. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, they never even looked at it. Right. The only person who did was a naturopath.
Okay. Now, you said you knew, you knew there was a thread from your childhood. There was a thread that tied everything together. Your gut was telling you there's a thread that was tying everything together, but you could never get a doctor, it seems, to help you to look at that thread until you found the naturopathic doctor.
That's exactly it. I mean, even from a young age, just asking for help and not getting it, I just kind of learned to just be a tough cookie, because if something hurts, and now let's say even in childbirth, Is my pain tolerance skewed? I don't know, because I sucked it up a lot growing up. That's how I was raised and what I was told to do. So if someone says, you just stubbed your toe, rate it on a 1 to 10, I just can't. I just can't rate things on a 1 to 10, because what's my 1 to 10 to your 1 to 10 to someone else's? Because I've just sucked it up my whole life.
Yes.
Okay, so you're growing up in the suck it up culture. You're hearing a lot of no's from your parents. You're hearing a lot of no's from people in the educational system. You're hearing a lot of no's and sort of giving back a lot of no's in the social environment. Talk to us about how that became an inspiration for you as an artist.
I wanted to control what I could. I wanted to tell a story and just be positive and just laugh. And I think that music was my outlet in order to do that. And my grandparents were big inspirations in my life. So I always knew I was going to move to Nashville, but I wouldn't do it as long as my grandparents were alive, because they were my best friends, my biggest supporters, and I just loved them to death. And so basically, as soon as they all passed away, that's when I went to Nashville. And some people would say, well, why didn't you go earlier? And it's like, because I loved them. Right. And so they played a big factor in when everything happened with me actually chasing full time music. And I wanted to pursue education as well. So to me, it was, I'm not pursuing this full time and relocating anywhere until I get a degree, until I'm finished university. So some of you who are listening to this are in the States where you call it college, but it's the same thing, just university in Canada. And so I chased my education and I stayed with my family when they needed me and well I could, right? And so one Nana was blind and one was deaf. And so I grew up seeing two massively different sides of the world.
Wow.
And so, the blind Nana, she could hear my singing voice, but she could never see me on stage. She could never watch a music video. She could never see me in the living room, flailing my arms around while I'm singing Celine Dion. But the other Nana, she got to watch that, but she couldn't hear that. And so I don't think I really realized how the impact of that in my life until they were gone. And until I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and until I got really, really sick and thought, who's the first person I'm going to call? And they weren't there. And I thought, that's who I need to talk to, because they see life or hear life the way I do. And I needed to speak to them, and they weren't there. And so there was this moment in my life where it was like music was just my outlet. I wrote about it, and I performed about it, and I sang about it, and it just helped me.
So now let's talk about the pain and how you dealt with the pain prior to your diagnosis, right? This was very difficult, right? You had folks calling you a weirdo. You had folks saying no to you. You had folks, you had your social no's. How did you deal with that pain that you were feeling? Did you face it? Did you put it in a box? I mean, how did you deal with the pain?
I think I always liked to talk about things and be honest and communicate. And I think there was a certain point in my life where I kind of went into a shell and didn't talk about it because nobody listened. And like you said, I was called a weirdo. And even into university, I would hang out with my big group of friends and I would say something and everyone would go, "You're so weird, Leanne." So I just thought, like, I'm just weird. I'm the weird sick kid. And eventually I just owned it. And I just thought, that's just who I am. And I just embraced it and realized I'm sick. And no doctor can figure it out. No family member, no friend, nobody understands what it's like to be me. And I realized that I just had to embrace that. And I just became the weird sick kid and just never talked about it and never complained anymore. And just dealt with it on my own through music. But my music was never negative and sad. It was always positive because I had too much of that negative, sad in my brain and in my body and in myself that I didn't want to have that shared with the world. All my songs were happy.
So, one of the things that, for example, Susan Cain, who wrote the book Bittersweet, which I'm actually reading now, argues is that if we put our pain or our sadness in a box, it's ultimately going to leak out. And when it leaks out, unfortunately, because we're not dealing with it, in many cases, we hurt other people. You know, that whole concept of hurting people, hurting people. Did any of that happen to you? Did any of it leak out when you were putting it in the box? Were there any people that you were lashing out at, or maybe even being less than kind to, because you weren't able to have a way of publicly dealing with your pain?
I think it's an interesting way to look at it, because it's a box and you close it, and eventually there's so much stuff in the box that what happens? It just overflows, and it's all about how you deal with it. And I think that I just tried to deal with it by not talking about it. And so when I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, I didn't really even know what to do. And my first call was to a family member who I won't mention. But my first call would have been my grandparents, and you know, my Nana wasn't there at the time, and she would have been my first call, but it was a family member, and the family member just said, like, I don't have time for this. I'm busy, and you don't have that. That's not real. But I'm sitting there on the floor sobbing, thinking, what does this mean? Is my life over? Who am I? I just went how many years being sick, and now I know what it is. What do I do? And I just didn't have that support. And so what I did was I turned to social media, which, if we fast forward again to talk, if this kind of comes full circle to talk about what happened recently with my pregnancy and COVID, it was the same thing. I turned to social media because I couldn't get the help. The doctors weren't there. Ultimately, I got COVID during Christmas holidays and New Year's, and there was no doctors readily available for me to ask questions to. So I use social media as a tool to say, this is what I have. Have you dealt with this? Reach out to me. And with COVID and pregnancy, I got a massive amount of people reaching out, sharing their stories and asking me questions. And then ultimately it blew up with me, being on a bunch of outlets and sharing my story. And so it's the same thing, going back to this. I just turned to social media and said, this is what I have. I don't know how to talk about it. I'm not ready to explain to you everything. I did a blog post on my website and said, when I have more info, I'll tell you. But right now, this is what's going on. And so I had a bunch of friends reach out and say, I'm kind of offended that you posted about this publicly without calling me and telling me.
So, Leanne, let's pause there for a second. I want to walk you back to one, because my social media expert is going to take over in a minute. Maria is going to take over in a minute. It's going to be her turn to talk to you about your healing journey. But I do want to talk to you about your diagnostic journey for one more minute, and then I'll let Maria take you through this really important part of and really beautiful part of your story. You got diagnosed, right? And one of the things that often happens with folks on our podcast is they have sort of split emotions. The initial emotional outlet is almost like celebratory, where they feel validated because they've had all these years of people missing a diagnosis, and they finally get their diagnosis, and they're now finally validated, and they want to celebrate for a moment. And then they have the second phase, which is, oh shit, now what, right? Yeah. Did you go through both of those, or were you immediately sad and scared when you finally got the diagnosis that you waited 25 years to get?
Immediately just sad, and just thought, damn, no one's going to believe me, because this is something that most doctors don't even believe. And it took me 25 years to find one person that believed it. And I just knew no one was going to believe me. And when I got told that no one believed it, it was just kind of, oh, well, it must be fake. I must be making it up. It's not real. And ultimately I went down the journey of, I got told I had fibromyalgia as well. And so do I have fibromyalgia, or is it just all Lyme disease? Who knows? Because those aren't things that you can look at and diagnose like you can cancer or strep throat or anything like that. So what is it? I don't know. Do I have fibro? I don't know. But again, fibromyalgia is something people don't also believe in either. So it's one of those, you have to go through the list of, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? No? Okay, well, it's fibro. So I was diagnosed with so many things that you just get confused after a while. And ultimately which I don't think we've discussed yet, I was ultimately diagnosed with cat scratch fever first. So there was this point in my life where I was in Nashville and started having really bad migraines all of a sudden, and a whole array of symptoms and vision issues. So I went to an ophthalmologist and they just checked my eyes and said, your one pupil is enlarged, but the other one's not. You have migraines, you're throwing up. I was presenting with a brain tumor. So they were convinced you have a brain tumor, you have a history of high prolactin, which
Wow.
also indicates a tumor, and you have inflammation, a history of inflammation in your body. Because
Wow.
this naturopath, just before she diagnosed me with Lyme disease, she started tracking and having baselines of everything. And so I was told, you have a brain tumor. There's no way you don't. You have all the symptoms, and your Nana passed away from a brain tumor. My best friend passed away from a brain tumor. My uncle also had a brain tumor. So at this point, I go home to this place I was renting in Nashville by myself, no family, no nothing, and just go, wow, I have a brain tumor. And
So now,
I was
I'm
seeing a
sorry.
guy at the time. And so I said to him, I just got told this. And he goes, oh, I'm going to a friend's birthday party. I'll try and come by after. And again, there's just me by myself going, wow, I'm alone again with the diagnosis. What do I do? You know?
Yes, can you hear me okay? Let me see. I want to make sure everything's good. Okay. So this is, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about the whole journey from beginning to, what you're speaking about now. So for those who are listening, cat scratch is is another name for a species of Bartonella, correct?
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit? So when you were diagnosed with cat scratch, it's one of the species of Bartonella that they can test for, where you tested for that, and then they found that you had that. And so you went from feeling like you had something similar to a fibromyalgia, all these different diagnoses, to now all of a sudden being alone in a place that you don't really know that well, thinking now I have a brain tumor. So it went from
Yeah.
fibromyalgia to
Well,
brain tumor.
it started with the cat scratch fever. So all of this
Okay.
started with everyone thinking I had a brain tumor. So I had been sick for how many years? I relocated to Nashville, was renting a place, and ultimately started having all these eye symptoms. Found the enlarged pupil. Eventually, I got an MRI done. Had an awful reaction to this MRI, and so I was throwing up for 15 hours and saying to my family, lying on the floor, throwing up and passing out, and saying, I need to go to the hospital. I'm too ill to even call 911. And I'm begging people to take me to the hospital.
Mm.
Finally, I get to the hospital. I'm put on IV, anti-nausea medication, all this stuff. And they're trying to wake me up to check my eyes. And they do notice that this pupil's enlarged and that I'm vomiting and all this stuff. So they said, we're going to call in a radiologist to check this MRI immediately and see how bad this brain tumor is. At this point, everyone's assuming I got a brain tumor.
Now
The
you're so
radiologist checks it. He comes back and says, you don't have a brain tumor. So it then they sent me to an ophthalmologist, which is more of an eye specialist than an ophthalmologist, right? So the ophthalmologist is the one that diagnosed the cat scratch fever, which I find interesting because that's not even
understood.
near his field. So he was flipping my eyelids up and he found a bunch of bumps on the inside of my eyelid. And he
Wow.
said, you have cat scratch fever.
Wow.
Undeniably, that's what you have. And I said, what? That's a song. Like, that's not even there's a
Right.
song called Cat. I was like, that's not even a real thing. What is this? How
Right.
did I get it? And so the migraines, the enlarged pupil, it was all just cat scratch
It
fever.
was all catch fever, divine
He
intervention that you ended up
exactly
there.
with my eyes. And so
With
in my
your
eyes
eyes.
never happened. None of this would happen. So he put me on a high doses of doxycycline, and for like 30 days. And then we reassessed. The bumps were gone. Another 30 days reassessed. And I was down this road of just and then I had some rashes on my face, and then all this stuff. And then I broke out and started having acne issues. And so they gave me doxycycline for the acne, and because the rashes turned into acne. And so I was on doxycycline for like 6 months. And I remember burning the bottom of my feet because I couldn't sit in the sun, and I just craved sunlight. So I would sit with an umbrella over me, but forgot to cover my feet. So the soles of my feet burned so badly that I could barely walk. And here I am miserable. And I'm like, no, I can't walk. And it just snowballed from there. So it was my eyes. And then still for 6 months, if not like maybe it was, so 2013, probably 2 years, I still had Lyme disease, and nobody knew.
Now, when you were taking the doxycycline for the cat scratch on and off, were you getting any die-off, or what we know, in the Lyme world as a Herxheimer reaction or die-off? Did you feel worse on this medication that they put you on for at some point acne? Were you getting any die-off at that time, or were you kind of smooth sailing through that medication?
I would say, looking back now and knowing what I know, that there's such thing as a die-off. Yeah, definitely. And it presented in my skin, because if you can't see me right now, but I have beautiful skin now because I think I'm through the woods of all of that. Will it come back? I don't know. Knocked on wood. I don't know.
It will not. Your skin is glowing.
I definitely had die-off. I would say, the hair wasn't healthy, the skin, and it was this physical reaction. And I started working out like crazy, and that was another outlet for me too, was exercising and music.
And I'm sure that the exercise also helped you heal in a lot of ways, getting the blood flowing, making sure that, you are stretching, things like that are just so important to the healing process, also to not overdo it. So when did you find out that you had Lyme along with the cat scratch fever? Because you were on this doxycycline, you said, for about 6 months to 2 years on and off, doing some sort of treatment for the either cat scratch or something else that would come up. How did Lyme then come into the picture?
Again, the die-off. I think I just got really, really sick and started to spiral down really fast. And this is kind of when you introduce my now husband. So for so long, he'd only known me as a sick girl, right? And so he was there right at the beginning of all of this journey. So he had met me just after the brain tumor thing was resolved, and it was, you don't have a brain tumor, you have cat scratch fever and extreme migraines, and you had a major reaction to an MRI, which then caused you to need time to heal. And so he met me kind of right after all of that. And so
I can really relate to that. I have my fiance as well. So I just want to say I can really relate to that. And those good men that, that know us from sickness to health and healing. They're very special. Continue.
It's so true. And I think, had he met me when I wasn't going through all of that, would we be married today? I don't know, because it caused us to have such a close relationship where I now had this outlet when someone was listening to me. Finally, someone in my life knew that something wasn't right, and they listened and they wanted to help. And so finally I had somebody.
You had support.
I had support for the first time in my life, I felt.
And do you think that made a big difference in terms of not just your healing, but how you felt, in the moments, and not just in the long term, is having that support system, even that one person?
Yeah, I would say it gave me this new motivation of, I don't have to feel this way anymore. Something's wrong with me. Somebody believes me. Let's get help and let's figure it out. And I had this new motivation of like earlier on in this conversation, I told you I accepted I was the sick, weird girl. Yes. And at this point, I just didn't accept it anymore. And I wanted to figure it out. And so I circled back to that natural path, because in between, right now in this conversation where we're at in this point in my life, to when I first met the natural path, currently I'm moving my hands in a rainbow motion. Nobody can see it, but I'm doing it. So
she is.
So I went back to that natural path and I said, you did wonders for me years ago. Can we do that? That had been probably 5 years, maybe 6 years. I said, can we do that again? You had me on all these weird tinctures and stuff, and everyone here probably listening knows what a tincture is, which was a word I've never even heard of.
Yes.
And I was back on the tinctures, and I was back on the supplements, and
So to clarify, this is after this 2-year period where you're still kind of going like, what's going on? So then you go
Yes.
back to this naturopath who has helped you so much in the past, and that you trust. This individual
Mhm.
listened to you, and you said, hey, I trust you. Again, like, I'm putting my health and my healing in your hands. Show me what you got. And then
Exactly.
you moved forward from there with treatment.
And I regretted stopping going to her, because I had so many people in my life, family, other doctors saying, oh, they're hokey, don't trust them, they're just hokey, those teachers are just full of water, and they're not, they're just taking your money. And I had heard that for that 5-year period. So eventually I just stopped, because I went, well, maybe they are just taking my money, and maybe it is just hokey, and maybe I'm just meant to be the sick girl. And so meeting my husband, just made me, we laughed so much together. We had so much fun. And it was just like,
So
I
healing.
want life, I choose life. I choose myself, and I choose life.
Yes.
And that's when I went to her and said, fix me.
So meeting your husband was a catalyst to bring out, he really validated you, and it brought out this new feeling of, I deserve to be healthy. I deserve to be heard. I deserve to have a good life. And
Yeah.
you moved forward with this doctor. So what treatments did you do with the naturopath and beyond that? Did you try basically everything? Were there specific things that really helped you, like top 3? Did you go from the yoga to the green juice? Was it the whole gamut?
It was everything. I'm telling you, it was absolutely everything.
People
And
listening
so,
understand what that means. Like the Lymeys who hear this, they're like,
yeah,
because when people ask, you go,
what?
I got to run down about 120 lists,
Yeah.
like from the smallest things to the biggest things that you're really doing. It is such an all-encompassing thing. So what were
Yeah.
those things for you that were and that really helped you?
Yeah, I would say everything. And so what we kind of started to do was treat the symptoms so that I could start to get better. So we knew that, the B12 was good for energy. So we did that. And we knew magnesium was good for the muscle aches and the migraines. So we did that. So we started coming up with a plan of like, let's kill this bacteria off because we know you have it, but let's also treat the symptoms so you can get back on your feet. And so even when the blood tests came back as positive, and even then my numbers were not through the roof positive because I was on doxycycline for 6 months. So had I been tested then, my numbers would have been through the roof. And I just wish I had that, because like you said, my husband validated me, and I just wanted validation from everyone. I wanted to show them a piece of paper with large numbers and say, this is true. You can't deny this. But what I had was medium numbers. And the naturopath said, we've caught this, but
early enough.
We've caught it early enough, but it's been going on for years, because God only knows what your numbers were before this doxycycline, before all those rounds of amoxicillin that your body now doesn't respond to.
And all that die-off and
all the die-off. She just said, like, you've been living with this for so many years. I can't even give you a timeline. And I went to my regular doctor, because again, everyone in my life was like, Lyme disease isn't real. Look at your numbers. They're just middle of the ground. You don't have this. They said, you got to see a medical doctor. So I went to a medical doctor, and I said, just test me. I just want to know, just test me. Tested me. Yeah, I came back negative, because once I started sharing my story and talking to other people who know they have Lyme disease, are coming up negative on the medical system's blood work, because the threshold is so low. And so you come up negative, but you have it. And so that made me angry. And so I wanted to start sharing my journey and saying, if you think something's wrong with you, go to a doctor. If that doctor doesn't believe you, go to another doctor. Tell people, scream and shout, because you are your own advocate and you know if you're sick. And just because a blood result is negative doesn't mean you're not positive, because it's a threshold that's set, right? Who's choosing this threshold? It needs to be lowered so more people know.
and updated. And,
Yeah.
Rich, we always talk about, all of the dealings behind the scenes and all of that. But, while we're doing that, we're also treating. So you mentioned, I believe I was reading something about ozone, that ozone was super helpful for you. Tell us about a little bit about your journey with ozone, because I know I personally, in my treatment, have a very similar story to yours, misdiagnosis, very long time. Ozone, I haven't done yet. I'm kind of leaving that for the very end, but I'm almost to the end. I've been in treatment for 7 years. So as someone who is gratefully co-hosting, but also is someone who's finishing up a treatment, tell the listeners and myself a little bit about your experience with ozone and how it's been so helpful.
I think by the end of this conversation, I will probably have you convinced to try it.
I'm so
Because
excited to hear.
my story with ozone is, again, unbelievable. I would say my story throughout my life is also unbelievable. Never mind the last year of my life, what my husband and I have been through with, the birth of my child and COVID during pregnancy and all that kind of stuff. I think that my ozone journey is the same. It's unbelievable, to the point that people just, again, I'm the girl crying wolf and making stuff up, and I'm the weird kid. It goes circles, all kind of comes full circle, where everything I do in my life is unbelievable. So I got home
unbelievable,
from,
but you know what? Maybe you are just that fabulous, that you are one of a kind. I'm just saying. Go ahead, continue.
I would love that. I
right?
love that.
Hey,
yeah.
You are one of a kind.
We're all one of a kind, aren't we? Right? That's why podcasts like this
absolutely.
exist, because everyone's story is different and you learn from everyone, right?
Yeah.
And so the ozone treatment, yes, the naturopath said, let's try all these tinctures and all these so-ons and doohickeys and do-whats, and I tried it all. And she said, let's try ozone. And I said, well, how does it work? She said, well, we're going to put it in your arm. I said, well, how big is the needle? Because I have tattoos, and again, you can't see me, guys, but I'm throwing my arms up to show you. I have about 7 tattoos, just
high pain
small
tolerance.
things.
No,
but I should have a high pain tolerance to needles. But once I started being the sick girl all the time, I could tolerate the needles from tattoos, but I couldn't tolerate the needles from blood draws, because I had so many in my life, so many IVs, the colonoscomies and all the tests for everything, right? They all involve blood draws and IVs. And I just had so many in my life that I just said, I don't want another IV, because how many times do I have to come in? Multiple times a week. Now I don't want an IV. How big is the catheter and the needle and all that stuff that you're putting in my arm? I want to see it. She showed me and I said, that's not going in me. No, I don't want that. Wow. I have tight veins. And so when I have to go in to get an IV put in, which has been too many times in my life, I'll tell you, it takes them an hour minimum to find a good vein.
Oh, wow.
And because my veins are either a process. And so I just said, you're not fitting that thing in there. I'm sorry. What are my other options? And so you can do.
So sorry to interrupt, but this
is
so interesting. So you went from like, oh, absolutely not. It's not going to work. Like for me, like ozone, I don't think so. The needles, like I've just been through too much. And then continue on where it turns out to be something that is so helpful. Yeah.
So she ended up going through my ears and my nose.
Get out.
Yes. There's also an option to go up the butt as well. So
we have options in ozone. Who knew?
We are not going to discuss that here, but there is an option to go up the butt. And so you're basically just trying to get the ozone into your body and your blood system so that you kill off the bad stuff by introducing oxygen. So basically, bad things don't like oxygen. So you introduce oxygen into your blood system and the bad things die off. So one thing she said to me in about 2010 or whatever it was, 2009, when I first saw her, was cut out sugar. You have inflammation, cut out sugar. So this again came full circle back to the Lyme disease, cut out sugar. And so the first thing I did was try to eliminate the inflammation in my body with what I could do at home, cutting out sugar. So
diet,
the tinctures, we had the vitamins, we cut out sugar, stopped drinking alcohol, which I mean, I'm not a big drinker anyways to begin with, but a glass of wine at night, whatever, it all is just inflammation. So the point with the ozone is that it just kills the bad bacteria in your body because it
Bacteria.
can't thrive. And so we introduced the oxygen into my body, and not through IV. Haven't done it, don't want to do it. If I really need to one day, I will, but I've just had so many IVs, I don't want to do it. But just if you're listening, I'm not telling you not to do it through IV because I believe that's most effective. And I, even in my journey through this, I saw people walking in and out of the building with the bandage on their arm because they'd just done it. So, so just entertain the idea of ozone, however you find you need to get that into your body. So
how often did you wind up? Did you do a series? Did she have you do a specific series? Did she prescribe you something that she kind of knew, like, this is what my typical Lyme patients might need? Or did you go as needed?
So she was new to the ozone world, but she was working with a doctor who was very heavily involved in the Lyme community. So he was going to conferences and stuff like this to learn about Lyme disease. And so this was back in 2015 when ozone was kind of, I would say, new. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
Sort
and
of.
definitely to traditional medicine, it still is new, right?
So a lot newer, you know, whereas now people are kind of talking about it but afraid to try it. And so anyways, I tried it, and what we decided that the ears and the nose and stuff would be okay because a lot of my symptoms were head related with, you know, the brain fog and the migraines and stuff like that, and changes that way. So we did that. And I will tell you, the second I walked out of that office, it was fall. So trees were orange and yellow. And I walked out and I was just like, whoa, the colors were different.
Brighter? Oh,
And
wow.
I'm telling you, I'm sorry for swearing, but you just can't make this shit up.
No, you can't make
And
this
nobody
up.
believed me. Not a single soul believed me. And I'm telling you, I looked around. The grass was green. The sky was blue. The trees were colored. And I just was like, holy F, is this what I've been missing?
Right.
And it circles back to my Nana. You know, I get goosebumps talking about it. It circles back to my Nana who was blind. And I thought, I could have been living with these colors. And
This
she didn't
whole
even get the
time.
choice. She didn't even get the choice because she was blind. She didn't even get to see these. And I could have been seeing this my whole life, and I didn't. So basically the way I can explain it was like someone took a squeegee and just went over my eyes, and I saw. And then I went and got more treatments, and I saw.
And you saw
And
more.
so for my first two treatments.
Die-off though at all with the ozone, or were you ozone made you feel a little bit better? You did have die-off.
The ozone treatments, you just need to take it easy. You know, it's so long ago that I don't remember exactly, but it wasn't bad enough that I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I remember how I felt that day. Because the migraines and all the other symptoms were so bad that finally feeling good, it didn't matter what the die-off was. It's worth it. So
of course, right, worth it. And did you do anything extra? Like, did you find anything like was really good for the die-off during ozone, or was ozone enough for you at that time? Like in terms of Herxheimer reactions and how you kind of managed that part of it so that you could keep going, because managing symptoms is so important so that you could keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's just everyone's die-off is going to be different, and you just have to manage those symptoms. So as they pop up, troubleshoot, and what do? Talk to your naturopath or whoever you're working with and say, this is what I'm having right now. What can I do? And so I just kind of treated each symptom. And I found that being positive was the main thing that helped me, because at this point there was no die-off that was as worse as what I felt before. So to me, the die-off just didn't matter. That's why I can't really recall any of it to you right this second, other than the things that, like the skin reaction, right? Yes. That's something that was physical that I could see. So anything internal was not as bad as what I dealt with before.
Right. So for you, you finally were feeling a little bit better. So it was just part of the game, as everyone out there listening with Lyme disease knows. Unfortunately, the die-off is part of the game. And in order to finish the game, we have to, it's like a video game. We have to dodge, face it, take some glutathione, dodge it that way, take a nap, dodge it this way. So it's all about managing the die off the symptoms, as you're saying, so that you can move through your treatment.
Yeah, because seeing colors for the first time in my life was worth it, that none of it mattered. And so that was the first
Amazing.
and second treatment. The third treatment, when she put it's basically a large needle that kind of goes into your ear, but there's no sharp tip on it.
Okay.
And so it's slowly injected into your ear, into one side, and then it's injected into the other side. And so they do the left ear and the right ear. So she went into the right ear, and right after that in going into the ear, I all of a sudden, it felt like, how you fly on a plane and your ears pop, but they don't pop one clean pop, right? Not like a snap of a finger. It's like there's multiple stages to the popping. I felt this massive pop in my ear as if something died. That's the only way I can describe it. Something died inside my brain or ear canal that all of a sudden I could hear.
So going back to your singing, being a wonderful singer, passionate singer, and having those beginning ear, nose, and throat issues, getting ozone directly into the area of the ear, nose, and throat was beneficial for you. Scary, highly scary, I'm sure. And you're so brave, but quite beneficial, it sounds like, for you.
Definitely. And so, it doesn't come without, some kind of, I wouldn't say risk, but for that day, when it goes into your nose, I'm telling you, it is not comfortable.
Right.
Something is being injected up your nose, and you close one nostril and something goes up the left side. Let's say you're closing the right, and you have to breathe in really deep and then hold your breath, and your eyes are leaking. It's kind of burning up your sinuses. And so I always had a sore throat immediately after. So I always knew I can't book a show that day. I can't have a write. I can't have anything. And so I kind of just learned to adapt my life around those ozone treatments. But my ears, all of a sudden I could hear, right? And when I was going through the tonsillectomy years ago, she was testing my ears and saying that I basically had like superhuman hearing in one ear, and the other ear wasn't as good. And so what I found out and what I gathered was that my body was adapting to this, like, you can't hear properly through this ear, but we still need you to hear. So we're going to make this other one superhuman so you can hear. So my body was being superhuman and was adapting to all these bad things in my life. And so it was like, holy crap, my body's a miracle. And you fast forward to now and all the crap, quite frankly, I went through with this pregnancy. I still some days look at my son and go, how the heck did you grow inside my body? And I was so sick during the pregnancy, but you're okay. How did my body do this? And I'm just
beautiful.
It blows my mind to think that a human grew inside me, and I grew that child, brought life amongst the chaos of my life and me being sick, and it still blows my mind.
So beautiful, and I'm so happy. Congratulations to you and your partner on the baby. So where would you say now, because I know you had the unfortunate health blip there with COVID. It seems like you're able to work because you're back to your music. Where would you say, like, percentage wise, you feel like you are based on maybe your worst time? Would you say you're like 80% better, 90%? Maybe some days it's different. That's kind of how it works for me.
Yeah, some days it's different. And I think that being pregnant, and I'm not trying to tell anyone out there, if you have Lyme disease and you want to have a baby, like, don't not have a baby because you have Lyme disease, of course, because it's a hurdle that you have to go through, because being pregnant with Lyme disease is not going to be the same as being pregnant without Lyme disease, because ultimately your body has more hurdles to jump over every day. And every time he grew inside my belly. Every time he grew, it sucked more energy from me, and I had to eat more food and nourish more. And I just had to be different and treat my body differently. But so it was a hard pregnancy. And I think that right now I'm recovering from that pregnancy. Yes. And so what I have going on right now in my wrists, I haven't been able to play music. So I haven't touched an instrument since November, December. So I played a little bit at an airport, there was a piano and I played because I just felt the urge to, but I've seen a lot of specialists about it. And so I have some nerve things going on in my wrist, which is a mix of, I just so happened to be in the age range and pregnant, which put me in the risk category of getting de Quervain veins, which is a specific wrist and nerve kind of symptom. Plus maybe some carpal tunnel from the shingles, which is neurological, plus stack that on top of the Lyme disease and the maybe fibromyalgia. I had this perfect storm
even Bartonella, those cat scratch. For me, the Bartonella was giving me like the burning pain that I would have in my extremities. The nerve pain, they would call it, is related to Bartonella more than anything else, and in my feet as well.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say,
right?
Was it all Lyme disease? Was it that my body just wasn't meant to be pregnant because I'm the sick, weird girl,
No.
And so I had to work.
Women's bodies are amazingly strong.
They're amazing. That's the point, is they're amazing.
Yeah.
And had I not been positive throughout it all and cutting out sugar and exercising and forcing myself to be healthy during this pregnancy, I probably wouldn't have done it. I mean, I haven't yet told my story about the labor and delivery, but I almost died during it. It was a very, very bad labor and delivery. And I can't help but think
not one break you're catching, but you're still positive.
That's why the doctors they just go, what? You deserve some good luck. I say, yes, send it.
Yes, send it. I hope people are taking away the positivity that you do bring, because I think that you have a beautiful balance. There's a time to be upset, and there's a time to take action, and then there's a time to be positive. And it seems like that's helped you tremendously.
It has, because without the positivity, I mean, I would just be living in a rock under a rock in a corner crying all the time, because you have to look and go, wow, I see a green tree out my window right now. And it's like, man, I never really saw that green the way it was, or I just birthed a child,
Right.
And so you just kind of think like your body is an amazing thing. And if you want to get better, that you can, despite hearing no. Because there were times, like even with my husband, like he's been through the ringer too, right? Because my mind wasn't right. I was having trouble communicating the same way that you guys had mentioned earlier, right?
Yes.
So I would say something to him, and I would say, for example, I had a Band-Aid on my finger, and I would say to him, I have to go change my battery. This is just one example, because him and I laugh about it all the time. I have to go change my battery. He said, the battery in what? I said, my battery. And he said, in what? In a car? In your phone? No, my battery. You know what I mean? My battery. And I started to get frustrated because I kept trying to say Band-Aid, but battery was coming out. And I'm thinking, why am I saying battery? But I'm thinking about a Band-Aid. Eventually I pointed and I said, battery. He goes, Band-Aid. And I just sobbed. And I just said, why can't I say it? Why is this happening every day? And he just watched me struggle with, there was points where I would try to walk through a door and I would bump into the corner of the door because my depth perception was off. And I would try to make dinner and I would take the pot lid to go put it on and I would drop it and it would break.
Yes,
and I would be on the floor crying. And so he watched me struggle so much that he went through it too, because he was trying to be strong for me, and he would get frustrated when he didn't know what I was trying to communicate to him. And I was frustrated. And so he was a catalyst. Those are the small things, right? And he was the catalyst in it all. And that's it, is him and I just realized the small things in life, like that's what matters. We'd been through
read my mind.
hell and back together.
I was going to pose the question, like, because you're talking about how the colors are more vibrant, and you can say what's on your mind. It comes from the mind out your mouth.
Yeah.
How do you look at life now? How does life feel and different? You have a beautiful baby from from almost your whole life being sick and having to deal with something, and now coming around the other side and having a healing.
Yeah.
Is life different? What did you learn? What are those special things?
I think it's, you just don't take things for granted, right? You look at my Nana, one was blind and one was deaf, and you see that, you grow up seeing that spectrum of things. And then I'm the sick, weird kid, like we keep saying, and you just have this new perspective on life. And meeting my husband was part of that, right? Because he dealt with everything with such patience and grace and caring and love that I was like, wow, that's what it feels like to really, really be loved despite of your illnesses and your challenges. Because a challenge is just a hurdle, but you can
Yes.
get over a hurdle, right? It's the same as a mountain. You can climb that mountain and get to the other side, but do you have the determination and the will to get to it? So I'd come from this such a dark place. Even there was one point, again, my husband was in my life at this time when I'd been sick my whole life, but right around 2015, I was the sickest I'd ever been, despite being, when I was sick in the children's hospital, of course, but I was very skinny. I mean, I should send you guys a picture, show you a picture of what I looked like and versus now. I mean, it is insane. Looking at myself now, I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not know that something was seriously wrong? And my husband and I were on the HGTV show Property Brothers, and we were cast on that show right when I was diagnosed.
Oh, wow.
So during the filming of the show was when I was diagnosed. And so I had to walk on set every day and put makeup on, and I had rashes, I had dermatitis all over my face. And the makeup artist on set, I would just like, kind of sob to her, and I'd have tears in my eyes, and I'd say, I don't want to go on national television right now. I'm sick, I'm skinny, I haven't slept, I have bags under my eyes. And
can't think
people watch that episode now and they don't know. They have no idea. Because I was still happy, It was getting in front of that camera that took every single thing I had inside my body. Hours. And I would cry. And this makeup artist was going, you're beautiful, Leanne. People would kill to look like you. And I said, but I don't want to look like me right now. I don't want to be me right now. And so
as a woman,
I had to.
You have appreciation now for your beauty.
Yes.
I'm sure that you took for granted, or looked in the mirror and said, I don't like this, or I don't like that. And now, now you have an appreciation for my eyes. I use them to see. My mouth suits for this. My eyebrows are here for this. My eyelashes are here for this.
And my body grew a human,
Yes.
You think, but in order to get to where I am, there was so many tough conversations, There was this one point on set, I think, where, my husband and I were, it was very rough for us. Filming Property Brothers was a rough time. And nobody to this day even knows that was the same time I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. Nobody knows that. And so they see this episode that just actually aired again a couple days ago. Oh, wow. And people are going, oh, you guys were so happy and you're so funny, Leanne. And I loved hearing you tell your jokes and your stupid jokes. And it was a rough time in my life, but nobody knew, because it goes back to where we're talking about social media, is you can put forward whatever foot you want to put forward, right? And you can post your happy little family against a white background when really in reality, your house is a friggin' mess and you haven't showered and your child's just crying all the time. So you put forward what you want to put forward. And I made this conscious effort to, once 2015 hit, it was like, no, I'm not going to lie and post motivational quotes anymore with pictures of me looking beautiful with makeup. I'm a person and people care about me regardless of me having challenges or not. And I just made this decision to just be honest. And I told people, I have Lyme disease. And I said, I have this and I have that. And once I got pregnant and had shingles and COVID, I said, I have this. And I just started telling people, and I had mastitis, a big infection during my nursing journey and breastfeeding journey right now. And I was in the hospital on IV, and I told people about it. And I just said, I'm a real person, and you just got to share it and just be who you are. And it involves hard conversations and telling your story and just being honest.
Being honest. So being honest is something that you really learned through this experience. Being honest about how you feel with other people. And also being positive. Would you say those are two tips that you would give to somebody who is either newly diagnosed with Lyme or starting their treatment or in the middle of their treatment?
100%, because you will get better. What is your better compared to my better, compared to someone else's better? You can't compare your journey to anybody else, whether that's like I just said, somebody you watch on social media has a perfect, happy family. Well, maybe they don't,
Mhm.
they always have makeup on and look perfect in their pictures. Well, maybe they just do that before they take their pictures.
Exactly.
Somebody who tells you they have Lyme disease, but all they're posting is pictures of them working out and looking healthy. And you're going, "Oh, I wish I had the energy to do that." You don't know
Just
what's
one
behind the
moment.
scenes. It's
Mhm.
one moment in time that they're capturing, and maybe they took 500 pictures to get one that they liked of themselves. So
Mhm.
I would just say, like, follow the people on social media that inspire you and give you motivation, and unfollow the people that don't give you that motivation, because that's something
Great.
that, quite frankly, we all look at every day. and
Yes.
and and if you don't, then maybe do it. Maybe add
Yes.
social media into your life, because there's people
Right.
out there that can motivate you and start conversations just the way that I am and trying to do. um, and and it's just to be positive, because you will get better. It will take a long time, because I got better and then I
Yes.
got pregnant and then I got worse, and now I'm back on the
Mhm.
journey to get better.
So I
But
think
but
that
but one more thing first was, during that journey of me getting worse during the pregnancy, look what
Mhm.
I got out of it. A beautiful child.
A beautiful
So
child.
it's just
The
an
best
example
thing.
of, you will get something out of it that's positive at the end of your journey, because I did, and it's a human.
It's a human that you
It's a
made. It's a
son,
very,
right?
yes. And I love how you said curate your feed so that
Yes.
either you're looking at things that are motivational, inspiring,
Cat
educational,
videos,
or
cat videos.
funny, right? Cat funny for videos, funny videos, cute, anything puppies, but then also to use social media as a way to connect with other people who are going through the similar experience. Because as you said, and as everyone and Rich, Matt, the whole Tick Boot Camp, all of us know, there is no one size fits all. This is one of the weirdest
Yeah.
illnesses, because not only is it one disease, usually it's, I mean, one disease, but it's multiple infections of all sorts of types, viral,
Yeah.
parasitic, it's multi-system. It is bizarre.
And it's
Uh,
all avenues of your body are affected.
it's a
Your pinky
full-on,
toe up to your
mhm,
left ear to your right eye,
a full-on
everything.
assault of the
Yeah.
of your body. So, it's so wonderful to have people like you to hear the stories and to have Tick Boot Camp exist, so that you can give this kind of really valuable information. And another thing I know that Rich and Matt always like to ask is, what advice would you give to somebody who just got bit by a tick or found a tick on them? If they're being bit, where do we go from here?
Yeah. I mean, it's a just trust your instincts, and if you think something's wrong with you, it probably is. If you don't feel like yourself, then you probably aren't. And if
Mhm,
you're worried, there's no harm in checking. And if you hear no, go to someone else. If they tell you
mhm,
no, go to someone else, and just keep hunting and seek out people who have the same issue. So
mhm.
even me posting about COVID and pregnancy, people reached out to me. Some girl from Australia reached out to me. And then there was a
Wow.
girl in England. We're not just talking on your own continent and your own
Mhm.
country. If you put it out into the world that you're dealing with something, people will find you. And in turn, you can find them. So go straight to the source, to people that are dealing with or have dealt with what you've dealt with, and ask questions and learn that way. Because
I love that
doctors,
answer.
thank you God for doctors, right? Because they have healed so many people, but they're not the end all be all, because
Mhm.
sometimes they don't know. Their knowledge is limited to what they learn from other
Mhm.
people who have knowledge. But
Right,
the
who
real
said this
knowledge
knowledge?
comes from people who have been through it and can
Yeah.
give you, cat's claw, for example. I took cat's claw for a while. It just didn't do anything for me.
Mhm. And
And
some people are
so,
annihilated by it.
yeah. And so I just say, like, I'm not going to tell you don't take it because it didn't
Mhm.
work for me. I'm going to say, this is something you could try, right? And
But if it
even on
doesn't
my,
work, don't freak out, because there's so many other options.
exactly, because just try everything and ask questions. And even if you're listening to this and you want to reach out to me, just my website's leannepearson.ca, or I'm at Leanne Pearson on all social media. You can just find me and just message me and say, hey, I heard the podcast. I got a
Awesome.
question about this. Or, if you feel inspired by this conversation, just tell me. I just want to
Yes.
hear from people. And that's how we all
Connect.
connect, is is ultimately just, if you're just diagnosed, go cry, sob about it, because that's also
Yeah.
part of healing.
Yes.
And then figure out how to be positive. And if that means a 10-minute walk outside to get fresh air and some sunlight and vitamin D, then just do it every day. And
Because
if it
it's better than
means,
nothing, right? We have to look at it that way.
yeah, hugging your cat, 10 times a day, hug your damn cat 10 times a day, whatever
Find
it
that
is,
thing.
that's, find something that's going to make you feel better, and just do it, and smile, and be positive, because your body is hurting and your mind is hurting and you're hurting, but you have to be positive, because even if you get better physically and you're still not positive, you just
Positive.
won't be happy, right? You
I
can be
think that's
sick
such a
and
beautiful
positive.
note right there.
Yeah.
So like that's such a mission statement for what we go through, is if we don't start taking control of our minds now and our thoughts, then
Yeah.
once we are physically healed, it will be very easy to slip back into sickness again if we don't watch out. And I know you talk so
100%.
much about self-care, so that's all, part of that. So your message is just so important and so all encompassing for while we're in treatment and after. And I
Yeah.
love that.
I mean, 100%, because sometimes while you're in treatment, you may go into a recovery phase and then need treatment again, right?
Mhm.
This isn't just a mountain that you're climbing and then you're done.
Yeah.
This is I was sick. I
It's
was
very
better.
common, right?
I got sick. I was better. I got pregnant. I got sick,
Mhm.
and I'm sick now. I am
Mhm.
sick again. Right now, currently, as we're having this conversation, I am not well.
You're on
But
treatment.
I mean, I'm smiling and I'm talking and I'm figuring it out, because I
Yes.
realize I've been there and I've gotten better. I know I will. And my
Mhm.
husband and I are trying to figure out how to execute things that will make us better and make
Right.
me better.
And
And
often
what does that
healing
look?
is not linear, even
No.
even for the average Lyme person, it's not a linear process. There's so
No.
much that we can't control outside of us as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's
And
another
even,
beautiful
and
message too. It's okay,
yeah.
it's okay if you're not going like this so fast. It can take you a year, it might take you 10.
Yeah.
But you'll get there.
And like you said too, is that with the changing aspect of it too, and how I had mentioned, find the outlet that you love that makes you better. Even those outlets might change. Even something that is like, let's say the 10-minute walk with the sunshine, that may be what makes you feel better. But then all of a sudden now you've got severe leg pain and you can't do
Yes.
that thing.
The
So
next
now
day,
you have to be malleable, and you have to learn to
Mhm.
adapt to the punches and roll with the punches, because it may change. And so
Ooh,
there was
I
one
love
point in
that.
my career where I was very sick and the doctors were putting me on a bunch of medications to try to figure out how to manage symptoms. And so I was on this one medication that was just super hardcore, right in the height of Lyme disease, and they were trying to treat the symptoms.
Mhm.
And so I had like this massive eye twitch, which it's a neurological symptom that I'm still
Yes.
trying to figure out, and working with a specialist to try to, do I need surgery? What is it? What needs to happen? And it's this right eye that just twitches like crazy. Everyone says, oh, eat a banana. Oh, you're just tired. It's too much coffee. And it's like, no, it's none of
Mhm.
those things. It's neurological. So
Yeah.
there was this time in my career where I had like a bunch of radio interviews. I had a single out. My career was doing really well, and my eye was twitching. And I would wake up and go, damn it, I'm on TV today, but there's nothing I could do for this twitch. And
Mhm.
I just accepted that I had this weird eye twitch that people would stare at and go, like, is she on drugs? Like, is she taking cocaine? I don't know. Do you take,
I think
I don't even do drugs. I don't even know what the
right.
terminology is, but, and
We
so,
we do
yeah,
no sugar.
yeah, we do. Exactly. No shit. And so at this point, I had this major festival that I was going to play, and I was on the main stage of this major festival. I was one of only like one of two females to be on this main stage that year. And I was so
Wow.
excited. And I was sick. I was so skinny that I had to go out and buy new clothes, because the outfit that I bought to wear didn't fit me because I'd lost so much weight.
Ugh.
And that outfit now I've given away because I can't fit into it. It
Can't
was
fit
like a
anymore.
000. And
Mhm.
so, and now I'm like a 4 or 6, So that's just how
Happily.
much weight that I'd lost. And I was forgetting lyrics. to my own songs
Your
that
own
I had
songs.
written. I had to stand on stage, one of the should have been a very proud moment in my career. And
Oh,
I was scared shitless, pardon my language, because I was thinking, oh my God, I would be in the middle of a song that I'd done a million times and I would forget where we were in the song.
mm,
And I would think, did we just do the first chorus or the second chorus? Did I say that lyric wrong? Did I, in my head, I was
almost like
thinking
a
of other
dream.
things while my mouth was singing something and my hand was
Mhm.
just strumming a guitar. And I was so lost in my own body and on stage. And that was a moment in time, right? To me, in that moment, it
Yes.
felt like the end of the
End of the
world. And
world.
I was so embarrassed. So what I said on stage was, nobody really knows this but blank. And I just told people, I said,
Uh-huh.
I have Lyme disease. My brain doesn't work. I've just forgot lyrics to 2 songs that I wrote and I'm embarrassed about it, but that's my life. And
And that
people
takes the
came up to
power
me.
away from that feel. That takes the power
That's
away.
exactly it. It took the power away from Lyme disease
Mhm.
because now people went, oh, she owned it. That's
Oh,
what
it's
she has.
okay. That's what she's got going on. No big deal. Like,
Instead of, oh my God, she forgot the lyrics on stage. Oh,
or is
that's
she on
so
drugs?
horrible.
Or
And people came up to me afterwards in the autograph line and hugged me. And they
I'm
said, thank you for sharing
sure.
your story. So I
I'm
took
sure
the
they knew
power
people with
away
Lyme as well,
and
and
I
for you
heard their
to,
stories.
and
Yeah.
for you with your platform and your singing, it gives you it puts you in such a wonderful
Yeah.
place to help other people.
Yes. So I went from this person who was forgetting lyrics to her own songs with a mad eye twitch on a bunch of heavy medications to what I am right now, going, that was a blip in time. So if you're listening, like what you're going through right now may feel like the end of the world, but it's just not. It's
It's
just
not.
not, because you will get through it and it's going to be a speed bump in
Mhm.
the scheme of things, because once you are better and you see that blue sky and the green trees and you may have a son or something down the road, or a husband like me who is
Something to look
understanding,
forward to.
you have things to look forward to, and you just can't just give up because there's
Yes.
a challenge and a diagnosis,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I love the positivity that you bring. And I love the fact that, which is something I had to learn, and it took me quite a while, is to roll with the punches. That's so huge. Anyone listening? So huge, because the punches are going to be different every day. And there might be 20 in one day. So
Yep.
you gotta roll with them, or else you're just going to be up stressed and put a dampen your healing, you
Yeah.
know?
And
So
I think too is that good and bad can exist at the same time. So just
yes.
because you have bad in your life doesn't mean you can't have good. So look at me with Property Brothers. I was on a
Mhm.
major HGTV show with my husband, and it was the best time of our lives, but also the worst.
You were celebrating and you were also mourning at
Morning,
that
because
point.
I was so sick, and I did ozone treatments in Nashville as well during that time period and had major die off while I
Chaos.
was on the show,
Oh,
which caused all the skin reactions. And so we're talking, I was at the lowest point of my life, but also the happiest, because I had
yeah.
this, my husband, and
That's a
and
beautiful
this
takeaway.
major show, and I was successful in my career, and so I had two things coexisting at the same time, good and bad.
Good
And so
and
it's
bad.
possible. You can't just let the bad take over, because good can thrive too, right?
Yeah. And it's finding that balance between, there is bad, but there's also good. And it's okay to acknowledge the bad, but it's very, very important to acknowledge the good. Sometimes we
Yes.
forget that part.
Yes.
Thank you for reminding us.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So Leanne,
Beautiful.
let's talk a little bit about what you were learning about yourself when you were learning to heal from Lyme disease, right? I mean, one of my favorite sayings is, well, you're working on Lyme, Lyme is working on you. Well, you're figuring out how to get better, you're figuring out who you are. So what did you learn about you, and how did that help you personally and professionally?
Yeah. I think I just realized, like, whoa, I'm a really strong person. You kind of look back at what you've been through, and even what I'm going through right now, is just, you just kind of think, holy crap. Holy crap. How did I go through that and am still standing?
Make it.
How did my body go through that? Even with me being pregnant and so sick that I was in the hospital, how did my body birth a healthy baby boy? How did he not get affected by my sickness? And how? You just, that's what I've learned is like, wow, I could really do anything,
Your
you know.
body's
And
amazing.
people have called me a warrior before, and they say you're a warrior.
Mhm.
Every time I say something, oh, you'll never believe what happened next. And I tell people what's happened and they go, holy crap, that's unbelievable. You're a warrior. And I can't call myself a warrior. I can hear people say it and go, thank you. Like, it's really nice to hear, but I can't say to you, I'm a warrior, because sometimes you just don't feel like a warrior, because you just think like,
Mhm.
why does life keep kicking me in the butt? What did
Why
I
do I
do with
have to
life?
be a warrior? Yeah.
Why? I
I
don't
just
want
want
to
to
be a
be a
warrior.
girl. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be a warrior. So I don't want to call myself that. I just want life
Mhm.
to stop kicking me in the butt, you know,
Yeah.
and I want to stop having to roll with the punches, but you just can't. That's just life. And
That's
everyone
just
has
life.
their thing and has their hurdles. And I think what I learned was just like, wow,
You
you
learn how
know,
resilient you are.
exactly.
So Leanne,
Exactly.
you're learning how adaptive you can be, and that
Mhm.
there's no limit to what you can learn, and there's no limit what you can do to improve your situation, right? And that's the an important starting point for any healing journey. Belief that you can get better, belief that there are no
Yes.
limits, belief that you can
Yeah.
continue to go forward. Another, I think, important thing that you learned, of course, is that life isn't about good and bad. It's about managing both. It's about transcending both, because no matter
Mm.
who you are, life is going to throw curves at you, right? People are going to get sick, people are going to die, there are just going to be things, breakups happen, these are things that happen in life, right? So if we have this artificial perspective that life is good and then bad is a departure, rather than
Mhm.
recognizing that good and bad happen together, and our lives are going to be richer based on what we learn from all of these experiences, then we're going to have a more healthy perspective. So talk to us
Mhm.
about how this has impacted you musically. I mean, I really enjoy a lot of your music, and I one of the things that I really appreciated about your music when I was studying you was that you were writing about so many of your personal experiences, right? I mean, your Little Man song is just beautiful. I mean, it really is a beautiful, beautiful song. And I Miles Away is another really powerful song. And I have to admit, my favorite as a cat owner is Catterday. So talk to us about all of your songs and how this journey from no to who you are is now being manifested in your art.
I mean, that's a great question, because it's talking about that box too, right? When that box fills up, where does it go? And for me, it was my music. So I felt like I'm, people would call me a country rocker if they see me perform on stage. I whip my hair around, I rock out, I'm stomping my boots. Whoops, I stomped my boot while I said that and then banged the desk. I don't know if you heard it, but I can't not stomp my boot without saying stomp my boot. So, and I rock out with my guitar and my bandmates, and it's a high energy show. And I always felt like those were the songs I had to release, because I was playing live shows all the time and that's what people wanted to see and that's who I was. But then when COVID hit and there was no live shows, and I had to, because of Lyme disease, I basically had to relearn how to play instruments multiple times. So I
Wow.
I used to play guitar really well, you know. I could learn a guitar solo, and I could just do all these things that I can't do now, and I had to relearn how to play guitar amongst this being diagnosed with Lyme disease. And then I used to play piano when I was younger, and my hands just, all of a sudden, my hands and brain couldn't communicate, and all of a sudden I just gave up because it was too hard. And so I started taking piano lessons again, but I did it silently because I was embarrassed. I didn't want people to
Right.
know that I was relearning an instrument I already knew, or that I was struggling so hard to learn an instrument. So my piano teacher, I just kind of warned her. I said, I have Lyme disease and my brain sometimes just doesn't work. And so if you teach me something, I'll be able to play it perfectly. But then 1 second later, I'm going to forget. I'm going to look
Mhm.
at the piano and not know where my hands are supposed to go for a song that I've played a million times. And so she was very gracious and unbelievable. And so I struggled to learn, and ultimately just decided like learning music theory is not for me, because my brain doesn't work that way. I don't work
Mhm.
mathematically and scientifically. I work with, this is what I feel like doing today. And some days if I sit
Mhm.
down and it's just too hard or it hurts, I just don't do it. And I try another day. And so I relearned how to play piano again for the umpteenth time or whatever people say during COVID. And my piano had just been sitting there collecting dust and was just a prop. And I learned how to play. And both the songs you referenced, Miles Away and Little Man, were basically the first songs I'd ever written on piano.
Oh, wow.
Because it was just too hard for me, and my brain, my mouth and my brain and my hands just couldn't communicate properly. And I sat, you can ask my husband, I sat in my music room forever, just trying to learn songs and to just work at it and work at it. And eventually I wrote this song. And so they're personal songs where all of a sudden I thought, I don't need to be anybody. I don't need to be a country rocker, what people want me to be. And I want to write a damn song about my cat. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a damn song about my cat, because in the music industry, you're told you have to fit in a box. So we're going back to the box thing. You got to fit in that box and you can't go out of it. So if you are a country rocker, you are a country rocker. You want to write about your cat? Nope. Nobody wants to hear about your cat. Go back in your box. You want to write about your son and have it be a sentimental song about being pregnant and a human moving inside your belly. No, you can't do that. Go back in your box. Again, hearing the word no, because I want to be who I am. Yes. So COVID and being sick and having challenges and even social media just taught me, be who you want to be. If I want to release a song about a cat, heck yeah, I'm going to release this song about my cat. And I actually wrote that song because I was having writer's block and my brain wasn't working. And so my husband and I started writing down random words and putting them in a hat. And each day I would force myself, I wasn't feeling well, and I would force myself to go into my music room, tune my guitar, and grab a random word. And I forced myself. I said, I will not leave this room until I have written a song about a random word. And Catterday was one of the words that day, and I wrote it and loved it. And I said, I'm just going to share this. So I shared this song about Catterday, and everyone loved it. And eventually, fast forward, once we were allowed back in recording studios, I recorded it as a joke. And then all of a sudden I was like, this is cool. I think I'm going to just release it, because who gives an F if I'm not in my box, pardon my language. I don't want to be in a box. I'm going to release this song. And people loved it. Does it have a lot of streams on Spotify? No, because it's not a Spotify song. It's TikTok. People are making videos from across the world who don't even speak the same language as me with this song. Yeah. And on TikTok and Instagram Reel. And it's just so cool. I've connected with this cat world of people who love cats.
I was going to say, it's funny, the songs that you would think, or the labels or the industry would think aren't relatable because they don't fit your mold, or like super relatable for everybody else, because we all love our cats, we all love our dogs, we all love Saturday with the kitties, and like that's what's relatable. You are relatable.
It's being yourself. And I think all of this that we're talking about made me realize, like, I'm a songwriter. I love being an artist, but I'm a songwriter. Why am I not sharing these songwriter songs? And people at radio with the last couple singles were like, oh, it's too personal. You can't talk about being pregnant as a female in this world. You can't say these things. What else are we supposed to talk about? And I just said, but that's what I want to say. It's my story. And during COVID, my husband and I, our wedding got postponed so many times that eventually we said, let's just get married. We're sick of waiting. We don't know when it'll be safe for people to travel and gather in large numbers. We ended up getting married in an Elvis chapel with our cat as the cat of honor in a cat backpack. And we decorated with streamers, and it was a sign that said cat of honor. And we got married by Elvis. We still to this day have not had a wedding. And will I fit into my wedding dress after having a baby? I've cried about it. I'll be honest. I want to wear my damn wedding dress, but I don't think I'll be able to fit into it because it fit like a glove at that moment in time, right? Yes, and we just said we are so over letting life just throw curveballs at us and us just dodging to try to miss them. We're going to just we're going to figure it out. So what we did was we told my family and friends, we're getting married this day. We're going to the courthouse. That's what everyone thought. I said, we have a big surprise. We're streaming it live. You don't want to miss it. And people are going, what's your surprise? Like, what is it? And nobody knew. And so people were guessing, oh, tell me. I won't tell anyone. We wouldn't tell anybody. So the live stream went on and people are looking, going, dang, that's a really nice courthouse. And all of a sudden we're standing there, we're dressed all cute in my husband had a white blazer on. I had this cute little party white dress and high heels. And we said, here's our surprise. And we kind of went like this, and out walks Elvis. And the whole family, during like the darkest time of their lives, during COVID, where they're stuck in their houses, they can't go outside, they're wearing masks everywhere. It was the darkest time of their lives and ours too. And we thought, how can we make this memorable for everyone rather than just going to the courthouse? Let's make it fun and memorable for everyone who can't be here. My dad didn't walk me down the aisle, and I didn't get a first dance, and we didn't do any of that. So we said, let's make it fun. So we got married by Elvis with our cat, and we made everyone's lives so happy for that, little blip, because now they get to talk about it forever. We get to watch all these videos. And so if you're watching this, you can go to my website, and all the videos are all there, and the pictures and everything of us with our cat that are adorable to make you laugh, right now. And so the two of us have just been making the best out of situations. And I think when you say, what have you learned about yourself? It's that there's nothing that can keep you down. There's just nothing, because life is just what you make of it. And yeah, right now in this moment in time, I'm in a very tough spot trying to figure out how to recover from, an emergency C-section and almost dying, birthing my child. But I'm having this conversation with you and motivating other people to say, like, it's just not the end of the world. You can go get married at Elvis, by Elvis at an Elvis chapel, and put your cat in a backpack and take her for walks outside, because life is just life, and just do it.
That really is the pattern that we've seen here at Take Boot Camp. And interviewing over 270 people, what we find is the people who are the most resourceful, the most adaptive, they're the people that heal. The people who are not resourceful, the people who are allowing the no's to interfere with their ability to move forward, are the people who don't heal. And that's why this is such a beautiful story, where you went from no to yes by being adaptive, by learning, by being resourceful, and never letting anything stand in your way, including COVID and the darkness that come along with COVID, including all the illnesses that you had to overcome that could have prevented many people from having the confidence to have a child. You went from no to yes because you were resourceful. So I have one more request for you before I let Maria ask the final question for the podcast. And that is, the next time you and your husband are creating the bag of all the words that you're going to use to write your future
I know
song,
what you're going to say.
please make sure you put a word Lyme in that bag, so that we can have another powerful song from you and your beautiful family that can help to inspire people to learn how to move from no to resourcefulness and adaptiveness.
Done.
So that they can heal.
As soon as you said that, it's in my head. I know exactly what I want to say, because it's the same with my song Little Man. I woke up in the middle of the night and had the chorus in my head. It was a mumble jumble of words, but I knew I wanted to say, I can't wait to hold you in my hands. I can't wait to meet you, little man. It was in my head, the melody, the everything. And I just said, I've got to write that. And I wrote it down, and I wrote it the next day. And it's the same thing. You just put it in my head. It's in my mind, and I want to write it.
All right. I can't wait to hear it. So we're going to let Maria ask you the final question on this really beautiful interview with Take Boot Camp.
Yes. So I know we talked about living the moment and really balancing all of that. But if you could wave a magic wand in 5 years-ish, what would you see in your life? Do you see another baby? Do you see a music career thriving? Do you see healing?
Yes. Good question.
All of the above.
I do see healing. I see that, I hope that I can make time for the healing, because with a baby, it's very tough to make time. And I think that healing doesn't happen overnight, and you can't just say, I want to heal, and then go sit on the couch. You got to work. And so I hope that I will be healed by then, and, working towards a publishing deal, in Nashville, and sharing my songs and hearing other artists write my songs, and watching my son grow up. And I hope he has a quirky, weird personality like me. And I hope that people call him weird, because I enjoy being weird. I like being weird. I hope everyone's weird.
I do
like
too,
weird
I gotta
people.
say.
I like weird people.
The same thing is boring over and over, right?
Yes.
That's what I say.
Yeah. So in 5 years, I hope that my son is a weird 5-year-old, and him and I get to just pull pranks on my husband all the time. I look at my son sometimes and I'm like, dad's gonna have trouble with
Just
us,
wait.
So that's what I see. I see music, I see family, and we would love to have another child. And for right now, I think the focus is the healing, because can my body have another child? I don't know, because what I went through was just so bad that would I want to knowingly do that again to myself, when I know that it's going to be such a long process to heal right now? I don't know, because I want to be a good mom. And can I be a good mom to the child that I have now if I go down the road of being sick again? So we have conversations to have about that. And do I see a dog? Probably. My cat is a cat dog hybrid. She likes to play fetch and chase squirrels. So she needs a real dog in her life. So we see a dog, and I just see, I just hope that the punches that life throws at us, we can, instead of dodging them, we can just take them on and just deal with them as they come, and stay positive, right? Because being positive is one thing, but staying positive is another.
It's a moment by moment choice that you're making.
Yeah. And there's one quote that I wanted to share too, because before I came on this podcast today, I have a blog on my page that I shared a little bit about my Lyme disease journey, and I thought, man, I haven't read that in a while. I wonder what I said, because it would have been so long. So I reread it and I went, wow, I didn't complain in it. I didn't say anything about any symptoms or any story of how I was diagnosed, nothing. It was just this, like, I have this. And then that was the first paragraph, and the rest is all just this, telling people to be positive and overcome it. And I'm thinking, wow, I didn't put any details or anything in there about Lyme disease. So I may go back and put some more details, so people who really are searching out help can get help as well as the motivation. But I found this one quote that I hadn't even heard in years, but it says here it's my favorite quote. So you know what? It is my favorite quote because I forgot about it. When I was really sick, I used to write quotes on my mirror. I used to put them on sticky notes and put them on my mirror so that I would see these, like, you are strong, you are beautiful, you can overcome anything. And oh, my phone's ringing. I'll stop that. And so this was one of the quotes that I used to have on my mirror. And so it says, you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. I don't know who said it. I don't know where I heard it, but it's my favorite. Think about that. Being strong is the only choice you have. So you're down in the dumps, you're sick, you don't know who to talk to, but you got to be strong, right?
Because what's the other option is, for some of us, it is death, sadly. And we can't go there.
So what do you choose? What do you choose? Is it life or is it death? Just choose life.
Essentially, that's
be
the choice.
Strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be distilled down into that.
So write that on your mirror, do what I did and put it on a Post-it note and write it on your mirror. Write it on your mirror.
I love that one. I am choosing life. And for anyone out there who needs to hear that, it probably wasn't just me.
You have no idea how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. And me telling the story about how I wrote Catterday in the hat, maybe have a hat and put a bunch of positive words into that hat, and then a day and save it for a rainy day. But our rainy days are not physically rainy, right? You don't look out and see rain, you feel rain, right? It's a rainy day in your body. Next time you feel that way, maybe pull something out of a hat that says smile, or I'm strong, or I'm beautiful, or I'm a mother. And you pull those things out and you look at that and you think of that positive word. It sounds cheesy, but you know?
No, one other thing I'm really learning from you from this talk to close is learning, because like being positive and all, you hear that all the time, but you don't hear how to make it fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when you're sick or you're going through something like Lyme disease, you try to be positive. It's a daily thing. You're working on it. And a lot of times you're just sitting there working on it in your mind, or maybe you write something down, but you have all these like fun, weird, which to me is a great word. I love that word, quirky, weird. I mean, that's the best, but you're making it possible I feel like for some people to be positive who can't be, to have a little jar where you write something nice about yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really amazing. The creativity that you had during your healing and during, right now is something to take away from this conversation.
And I think that's
true. Yeah.
I think that's really a perfect way to wind down our podcast. I can't thank you enough, Leanne, for sharing your beautiful story and your family's beautiful story. And Marie, I can't thank you enough for co-hosting with me on this beautiful episode of the Tick Bootcamp podcast.
Thank you. I had a great time. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Tick Bootcamp interview with our guest, Leanne Pearson. To our listeners, we have a call to action. First, if you'd like to learn more about Leanne, please visit our Instagram page at Leanne Pearson. Second, if you enjoyed this episode of our Tick Bootcamp podcast, please share it with your friends by using the social media buttons you see at the bottom of our post. Third, Tick Bootcamp has created a Tick Bite blueprint that has been inspired by the information that has been shared with us by past podcast guests. We urge you to visit our website at tickbootcamp.com/bite to view the blueprint. Fourth, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify to get your automatic episode updates of our Tick Bootcamp podcast. Fifth, if you'd like to search our podcast library of over 250 episodes for specific keywords, please visit tickbootcamp.com/search. And finally, if you'd like to share feedback with us here at Tick Bootcamp, please use the contact form on our website or DM us on Instagram. Thank you as always for listening.